Welcome to the Trader, a Traitors podcast. I'm Matthew, a writer and 100% Traitors superfan, working in TV development. The Trader features deep dives into every episode of English-speaking versions of the show, as well as interviews with contestants and special episodes every now and then. This season of the podcast is dedicated to the Traitors US Season 3, and today we're exploring episode 9 of that season. And to help me do that is my regular Traitors US co-host, it's David Bloomberg.
Hello. Yes. For those of you who don't know me, welcome to the podcast. I have been covering reality TV for over 24 years. Everywhere anyone will let me cover and talk about reality TV. Yeah, if you want to find me, you can find me, and we'll talk about that more in the social media side.
Yeah, and David, we've had a bit of a chat before we start recording. I didn't even talk about the actual episode itself. We've talked about like comments people have been leaving on YouTube and questions people have sent in. We've not actually addressed the fact that for me, I can't believe what happened in this episode.
I know I mean, you and I have been predicting. Okay. I presume anyone who's already listening to this knows what happens and doesn't actually listen all the way through before finding out, oh my gosh, what happened. So we're going to presume that. But yeah, I mean, we have been predicting exactly the opposite of this for a long time. And I think the edit has been showing us exactly the opposite of this
Yeah.
for a long time. I also think that a lot happened in this episode that we'll get to that flipped it. I mean, we've said before, you can go into one episode and we can make our predictions, and then something will come out of nowhere.
Yes.
And that's certainly what happened.
Yes, and before we get into all of those details, we are going to set up our game of deception and betrayal. This is the Trader Traitor. The not so secret mission for David and I from here on in is to tell a little lie to one another. Well, I'll say a little lie. It could be a big lie. It could be a medium-sized lie. It has to be a fabrication, a made-up fact about the traitors, ourselves, anything else. For example, I could lie and say that the reason the background is different for me today on the podcast, people watching on YouTube, is because my house was blown up by a big barrel of gunpowder with Allan coming laughing at it. However, I couldn't lie by saying that I predicted what was going to happen in this episode in my head and I just didn't say it out loud this whole time. That would be a fake opinion.
Yeah, and
So we're
there's Allan coming laughing at you right behind you. He's
yeah.
right
So we're looking for fake facts rather than fake thoughts and feelings and opinions. At the end of the episode, David and I will guess each other's lie, and listeners, of course, you can join in too and see how good you are at traitor detecting. David, last week, several listeners caught you out on your LeBron lie. Are you ready this time to betray not
I
only me, but also the listeners?
I will try, but here's the thing also, at least one of those listeners who happens to be the editor, who happens to also be British, immediately knew that I was lying, and you claimed it was anti-British,
Sorry.
my lie. And so I just want to point out, no, it was just anti-you.
Just yeah, it's just me that was the fool. But not this time. I shall not be defeated. David, are you ready to betray me once more?
I am. I am.
Okay, our game begins now, and we've I think we've got a few points just to discuss on the
Hmm.
previous episode. Before we move forward, there have been lots of comments all over YouTube. People noticing on Spotify, mainly people doing what I feel I cannot fit into 24 hours in a day that I have, which is listening to other podcasts with Britney and Carolyn and sort of fact checking things that people are saying outside of the show compared to what they said in the show. So there's all sorts of discussion going on online. Just one thing that I'll pick out is a YouTube comment from Glasgow Warrior, which is a great name. Glasgow Warrior says, in Carolyn,
Warrior or worrier?
O Warrior with an O, but I
Okay.
think it's supposed to be a joke on Warrior
Okay.
with an A.
Okay.
So Glasgow Warrior, hello, says in Carolyn's podcast, chatting with Brittany, she said that she didn't see Alan at the church, and we talked quite a bit about that in the most recent
Hmm.
episode. We were wondering, is it reasonable for
Right.
us to think that she didn't see Alan and at the face-to-face murder? But apparently, Carolyn says that no, she actually didn't see Alan, so she really did have to make this up. She said she just had to exaggerate her Carolyn-ness until Tom saved her. She also said that she and Danielle wanted to play the murder for humor, but the producers wanted them to be dramatic, which they both found embarrassing. So, yeah, there we go. She really did have to pretend and make up and got away with it.
Yeah, and I think that that's a mistake on the producer's part. I
Yeah.
don't think you should set the traitors up for that. I think you should, if there is a traitor who is in a position similar to what a faithful would be, and you need to run the traitor through the same thing,
Hmm.
just like you would if they were being put into coffins, if they were being put on death row. I know that that's with other people, but still, you should run them through everything that the faithful are going through. This was a mistake on production's part.
Yeah, I feel that way too. It seems like yeah, it's a too obvious an oversight, which almost caused a big problem. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess by the end of this episode, it doesn't matter. But David, I think you had another couple of thoughts on the last episode.
More on this coming episode. So I don't
Ah,
know if
okay.
you had more on that, but yeah, the so last week I mentioned how I wish there were more restrictions on social media
Mm,
posting and what they can say on
yeah.
podcasts and stuff like that. This week it was even worse. Danielle posted something that I accidentally saw on X because even though I'm pretty much never on X except when I go over there to insult the owner of X, um, I was notified because sometimes X does these notifications and I haven't turned them off, and it'll just like randomly be like, "Hey, this person posted this," and so they sent this to me, and I thought it was a direct message, so I opened it up, and it was a response to something Danielle had posted or a quote tweet. And then also I heard that Britney posted something on Instagram, though I didn't see that. And neither of them spelled out what would happen, but they gave apparently, again, apparently in Britney's case, but to me, for sure, in Danielle's case, they gave enough of a hint that it partially ruined this episode for me and some others that I heard from. I understand wanting to promote an episode, but you can do it and say it's exciting without spoiling it. Now, what Danielle said, was it horrible? No. She posted, tomorrow's episode is going to be crazy. To my fans, dot, 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 I'm so sorry. Now, admittedly, some people saw this as her saying she was going to be
Mm,
banished. That's not what I saw at all. I saw her apologizing for what she was going to do to Carolyn.
uh, yeah.
And sure enough, at the more and more it progressed, the episode, I was like, yep, that's exactly what it meant. And it reminds me, and I may have mentioned this before, but it reminds me of sometimes, like if I'm in the middle of doing other things, I'll record a football game.
Yeah.
And then, so I would go upstairs where my wife was sitting watching the game live, and she would say, "Have you started watching yet?" And I'd say, "No." She's like, "Well, you don't want to." Like, yeah, that kind of spoils the whole point. She hasn't technically told me what happened,
Yeah.
but she's told me enough.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sure Danielle thought she was being coy, but to me, she wasn't.
Yeah. Okay. Interestingly, I didn't have the episode spoiled for me. I was, you know, too, for the most part, shocked by what happened. But I think within the episode, there's a bit of
Oh,
an indication about what is going to happen by the time all the votes come in.
oh
So
yeah. If you're talking about during the roundtable, the Carolyn confessional
yes,
and the
exactly.
Danielle confessional, yeah, there were. I said that. Laura, who appeared as a guest here independently, said that. Also on Blue Sky, yeah, she was sobbing.
Yeah. So
You know, and then you had Danielle, who someone pointed out was in a different outfit. I didn't notice that myself, but and perfectly perky and happy.
yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay, you have just told us what happens in this roundtable.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this isn't the first time it's happened on the Traitors. I don't know, I can't think of specific examples, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I've noticed this kind of thing every
Yeah.
now and then before that the confessionals sometimes give too much away about what is going
Yes.
to happen. So
Yes.
that was a little bit irritating.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now, speaking of things that give too much away,
mhm.
I was also accidentally spoiled on the initial outcome of what the traitors were going to do, whether they would recruit or murder and who it would be, because it turns out the preview
Yes,
contained an overhead image of the chessboard.
yes,
And someone posted a screenshot of it and noticed whose name was
yes.
missing.
No Sam on the boards. I saw
Yeah.
the exact same thing and naively tried to convince myself, no, there's an explanation for this. But yeah, turns out it was
Yeah.
spoiled.
Yeah.
Uh,
That was, I mean, that was just dumb on the promo department's side, but it's something we've seen before in different shows. Sometimes CBS here will accidentally spoil a Survivor episode, part of a Survivor episode. They'll show like clips of which tribe is in tribal council. Um, Sometimes I've heard it's worse on Australian Survivor
mm,
because Channel 10, where it airs in Australia, will do promos and they'll say the vote comes down to John versus
uh,
Jim. And it's like, okay, you've just told me who wins the immunity challenge then and who
yeah.
loses it. So,
Yes. See, David, this is why I don't watch the previews. This is
yeah,
because sometimes there's a little spoiler in there, and I don't want to know. So I don't get to see the previews for US one. They don't show
well,
them on the
right.
BBC, but
Well, it's
um,
funny because it's kind of the opposite of I don't normally watch the recaps,
yeah,
And so, I just have to assume that nothing important is in the recaps.
yeah.
So I'm sure when we start here, you'll tell me if there was, because as usual, I didn't. So,
Yes, I will. That is the first thing I'm going to begin with. So let's get into it. Episode 9, Traitors US. Here we go. Yeah, we start with a recap, and we're reminded of like the obvious things. So Chriselle was murdered face to face with the most anticlimactic reaction to finding out who the traitors are ever.
which, okay. So, sorry. I'm going to interrupt you right away. It's funny because her clip on YouTube about
Mm,
her post murder clip, she was so excited and she was like, oh, it was so dramatic and so
yeah,
exciting. And I'm like, maybe in your head it was, but not on the screen it wasn't.
yeah. I don't know if I don't know Chriselle really beyond the show. I know she's on Selling
Same.
Sunset,
Yeah.
and maybe she's just sort of quite concerned with appearing very. I mean, she's very
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Maybe that's her thing, is just to be incredibly composed at all times and not lose her mind at stuff. I don't know. Um, yeah. Apart from Chriselle being murdered, we then had Sierra being banished as a faithful, of course. But there is a big focus on the recap on Danielle versus Carolyn. They make it so clear this episode is about them two going
Okay.
at one
See,
another.
another reason I don't watch the recap because, see, on Survivor, well, okay, on Survivor, I always watch it live from the beginning. So, and so when I watch it, it sometimes gives hints. Like on Survivor, there'll be like all of a sudden it'll pop up and it'll show a clip of so and so finding an immunity idol 3 episodes ago, and you go, I wonder if that
Yeah.
immunity idol is going to come into play. Now it doesn't always, but it's a reminder there. And so, yeah, I'd have been annoyed if I saw that recap and then, um, had that in my head again on top of everything. It would have just
Yeah.
made it even more certain. Of course, the other reason I don't watch the recap on the Traitors is as soon as it pops up, there are people live posting about it,
Mm.
and I want to be among them. Now, I was already delayed by a couple minutes because someone called, and I was like checking my phone, and last week it showed up on my phone Peacock app before the TV. This week it didn't show up on my phone Peacock app, but I saw someone post about it, so I ran down to the TV. Well, then I hit the skip recap button so I could hurry up and get to the show
Catch up.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the recap here does make it pretty obvious that like that's gonna be the focus of this episode. Yeah, didn't bother me at the time, but I guess going on, maybe it was a bit too much, bit too heavy-handed. And we're of course reminded that the previous episode finished with Danielle and Carolyn yet again disagreeing in the turret because they want to seduce, but they can't agree on whether it should be Gabby or Brittany. And the episode begins, I mean, really just at the exact same moment. They're arguing. Danielle's trying to convince Carolyn that if they recruit Brittany, well, she says first she contradicts herself as always and
Yes.
says, if we recruit Brittany and she gets banished, it'll be great for us. Carolyn's like, no, that you two are way too close. I'm not agreeing to this. Danielle then immediately says, no, but we can get right to the end with her. I'm like, you
Yeah.
just said you thought she might get
Yeah.
banished.
This talking out of both sides of her mouth. I mean, and then she wonders why Carolyn doesn't trust her.
Yeah. Um, eventually, Danielle concedes and says, well, she's like, fine, I'll
She,
sacrifice what I want again.
yeah, she plays the martyr here. Like,
Yeah.
Carolyn, you never listen to me. Nobody ever listens to me. And it's like, you literally didn't listen to anything Carolyn said for at least the first half of the game.
Yeah. 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 I always
Um,
felt like she sort of bulldozed her decisions through
yeah,
so
I mean,
far.
someone pointed out on Blue Sky, a lot of it was Bob and Rob bulldozing, but
Sure.
Danielle often joined in
Yeah.
and, helped to push it along. And then, like I said, early on, she didn't even want to work with Carol. She's like, I want to get rid of Carolyn to get someone I can work with. She didn't even try to work with Carolyn to get rid of Rob
Yeah.
initially.
Yeah. So they eventually return to just the idea of murder, which
Mm-hmm.
is a little bit annoying because I think, oh, the end of the last episode kind of tricked us a bit, and the funny thing is, Carolyn had initially suggested murder, and Danielle was like, no, no, here's why. And I also thought they should
Yeah.
have seduced someone, but hey. So they return to, yeah, who they're going to murder instead. Yeah, we've got Danielle in her confessionals insisting that she's the victim. Carolyn never listens to her. And it's time to go through their options. They agree they're going to have to kill someone who was in the group from the mission in the last
Mm-hmm.
episode who did not win a shield. They start with Dylan. They think, well, he's not connected to either of us. It's not going to sort of come back to us very obviously. It would also put a spotlight on Gabby because Dylan keeps voting for her. Carolyn then just is like, no, we're not doing this. They think about Sam. Danielle says he's smarter than everyone thinks, and Carolyn say, well, actually, I have to say, Carolyn also contradicts herself a bit because she says, no, that's just recent. Generally, people think that he isn't really bringing much to the round
Mm-hmm.
table, and therefore that's a bit suspicious. They think about Dolores. They think she's never going to get banished. Everyone, apart from Tom, as it turns out, thinks that
Yeah.
she's faithful. Carolyn says she trusts both of us. Doesn't that mean we want to keep her in the game? Even this is still disastrous. They cannot agree on anything. Eventually, we cut to Danielle signing the letter, which I assume they are going to murder someone. They haven't
Yeah.
gone back again, and
Right.
they're going to seduce. It just feels like we're back to square one. These two do not trust each other, and we end the turret with Carolyn telling us it's just a matter of who can get who first.
Right. Right. I will say one more thing about Danielle. She complains about Carolyn saying no to everyone that she said. Okay, rewind. What was it? Two episodes where she literally said no to everyone that Boston Rob
Hmm.
proposed. So again, you know, Danielle, stop playing the martyr here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this partnership was just sort of doomed to fail from the beginning. I think I understand they both they want to win and they want to stick
Right.
to their guns and they want to play the game. They want to play the game, but I guess all of the traitors were guilty of letting that overrule the idea of teamwork as traitors. Like that getting their way was more important than being trusted by their fellow traitors. And I just think
I
that's
mean, I would say that Carolyn gave in quite a lot in the early goings.
mm, yeah,
Um, and I think it just eventually got to her, as we will discuss as we go on here further. Um, I think it just eventually got to her. And when it was down to her and Danielle, and she knew Danielle had tried to stab her in the back previously, she wasn't what. Unfortunately, she put up a fight at some of the wrong points.
Yeah.
Again, as we'll get into. But and then Danielle, she didn't even really give Carolyn a chance at the beginning. Like I said, she determined that Carolyn could not work with her against Boston Rob, and then decided she was going to get rid of her. And the interesting thing is, so it seems like Danielle fell for Carolyn's act early on, but then turned around and realized it was an act and used that in this episode to help get rid of her.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. It's oh, there's a lot going on. There's a
Yeah.
lot. So we start off with, properly, we're at breakfast. And Alan's voiceover tells us explicitly, in case we were unsure, they
Yeah.
chose to murder, not seduce. I mean, the fact that we've cut to breakfast kind of implies that, but uh, Gabby and Carolyn arrive first. Gabby thinks that they need to switch gears. Maybe they shouldn't be going after the big personalities, foreshadowing, and brings up Danielle immediately. She says she doesn't
Yes.
trust Danielle's roundtable defense, and I mentioned this in the previous episode that I felt it was a bit too planned and prepared. That
Mm-hmm.
Danielle was saying, "Think of all the people who've been murdered. I was close to those people. I would never have done that." And Gabby has noticed. I have to give Gabby a fair bit of more credit than I have. I think that she notices, hey, that's too obvious a defense. Maybe should we? Is it sort of a double bluff?
Yeah. Plus, all the crying and,
Yeah.
all these other things that we've talked about. And I know Carolyn is just, sitting there listening to this going, ah, you
Yes.
know,
Yes. So Carolyn is in on this straight away. She's here for
yeah.
it. Brittany and Tom arrive next. Brittany's sort of speculating about maybe Dolores is going to be murdered. Then she says she's really nervous Danielle's been murdered. I'm going to say this a couple of times in this episode. I'm so confused and annoyed, I guess, because we hear all of these things
Mm-hmm.
on social media and podcasts. Brittany keeps apparently saying, I knew it was Danielle the whole time. And every time I see these clips in the show, I think, how does this align with what you're
It
saying now
doesn't.
after
Yeah.
filming? I don't know if you're just making all this up to look good now, or I don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating. And people on the YouTube comments are saying, "Oh, she was coaxed by product." I don't know if she was. I don't, I don't know what to
Yeah.
believe. Ivar and Danielle arrive next, and Danielle
Well,
knows.
also, especially that later scene where she literally breaks down into tears
Yes,
at the idea that Danielle could have been murdered. I'm sorry. I don't think that was acting.
yeah, I don't either.
So maybe she had an inkling the first episode, like, oh, Danielle could be. But then as they got to be closer, it went away so that both things are sort of true. But yeah, it definitely does sound like a little bit of giving yourself credit in retrospect.
Yeah, I feel like that. Ivar and Danielle arrive next at breakfast. Yeah, Danielle knows that Carolyn is coming for her, so she says she wants to plant some seeds against Danielle, which, well, she's kind of already been doing that since like day two or three. That means that at this point, Sam, Dolores, and Dylan are the final three to return. Well, final two to return. One will be murdered. And it's Dolores who arrives next. I was a bit surprised, I think. But then again, they want to keep as many. I guess they wanted to keep as many women in as possible because they knew that a
Yeah.
woman was likely to get banished. So even though everybody kind of knows that Dolores is a faithful, might as well keep her. She even comes in and says, "I packed last night. I thought I was going to go." Gabby is saying that she thinks Dylan is the most faithful, so he's probably going to be gone. And Ivor is talking about being really close to the guys. The door knocks, and in comes Dylan, meaning, yes, the chessboard preview mistake was, in
Mm-hmm.
fact, accurate. Sam is
Yep.
gone. Sam has been murdered. We flash back to the turret, and Carolyn is saying, "Oh, yeah, let's get rid of Sam. He's catching on." But yeah, just moments ago,
Yeah.
it seemed like she was not saying that, so it's confusing.
Yeah.
Maybe they were in that turret for like 2 hours filming, and,
Right.
and in the space of 2 hours, your mind does change. I don't know because they can't agree. And they also think that murdering Sam isn't going to have any obvious connection to them, so that's fine.
Hmm.
We see Sam receiving his letter. He says he was expecting it because he was now coming up with good ideas. Maybe a little bit. And he says he played with honor and respect. Good for you,
Okay.
Sam. It didn't do you
He
very well.
he also says one other thing. The thing I hate. One of the things I hate. I wouldn't change one thing.
Yeah.
Sam, you lost. So maybe consider that you should have changed at least one thing.
Yeah. I mean, unless we've said it before, maybe Sam is earning hundreds of thousands of dollars in alimony from Britney Spears, and this prize money means nothing to him. So he got some screen time. He made it to episode 9. He got what he came for. He's had his fee for his appearance.
True.
But maybe that's a little bit of what's
Yeah.
at play. Back to breakfast then. Alan arrives looking like a Dr. Seuss character today. I don't know what's happening with
Someone
his
said he
hair.
looked like an Oompa Loompa.
Yeah,
He
he
had the
does.
yeah.
He does. Or like he's preparing for the role of a 3-year-old in some new
Yeah.
movie or something. He gives them his clues. He says, "You'll need to stay one move ahead and avoid rookie mistakes." And I know I've said this before as a lie in the game. Claudia used this exact line in Traitors UK. I promise this is not my lie this time. So it made me laugh there that we had a bit of repetition of the exact same clue. Although this time the players don't seem to piece it. They're just like,
No.
one move? What? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe you wouldn't figure out it was a chessboard, but they seem very clueless about what this clue was leading them to. Dylan has a little bit of like, hey guys, we made it this far. We should be so proud of ourselves. And he's shocked he's still here, but thinks there must be a reason for this. And Dylan
Right.
kind of becomes crucial to the entire episode. There's so much focus on him.
With
I
good reason. I mean, he figures it out. Yeah, someone who trusts him wants to keep him there for the end game.
Yeah,
But then the question is what he does with that information. And it's not like he's only friends with one person. He's close to several people. As it happens, two of those people are traitors who are both keeping him here for the end game.
yeah, exactly. And I do now wonder if Dylan is making it all the way to the end. I wouldn't be surprised if he's still there at, the end game.
Mm-hmm.
So we spread it around the castle with the peacocks here. Dylan's very surprised at that. And there is a little shot, David, if I'm sure you would have noticed, there's a close-up on the bookshelf and the book. I can say this now because this is not spoiling anything about other seasons. There's a close-up on a book on the bookshelf and it's called The Seer. And lots of people
Mm-hmm.
who know Werewolf and other social deduction games might have clocked that as unusual or significant. The Seer is a power in games like Werewolf where a player gains power to find out the absolute truth about one other player. And we'll get to it. The players themselves even talk about this towards the end of the
Yeah.
episode. So we get a little shot there, which makes me think, oh, I'm pretty sure they're going to include this in this season. Uh,
Well, I decided not to tell you this. I posted it on social media, but I know you're not there. Um, Someone pointed out to me that episode 10 is called The Power of the Seer.
oh, okay. There we go.
So I looked it up on IMDb, verified it. I believe that's the title. And yeah, so it was like, oh, that kind of gives it away because someone had responded to me in an Instagram comment saying it is definitely coming back. I'm like, how do you know it's coming back? He's like, look at the episode. I'm like,
Uh,
oh, okay, yeah, that would do it.
yeah, there we go. So I guess next episode, we're
Yes.
gonna find out more.
Hmm.
Yeah, which mate, because there only are 2 episodes left. We
Right.
only have 11 this season rather than 12.
Hmm.
Uh, Next we've got Tom and Gabby. They're talking about Danielle in the kitchen, and finally they're coming back to this the urn riddle mission that she kept giving shields away, and they seem to be clocking. Hey, that was quite weird that she did that.
Yeah.
And Gabby, again, a bit more foreshadowing in the edit, says, "I think traitors will start turning on each other. We're going to see drama tonight." And even at this point, I thought, "Oh, I'm really worried about Carolyn already." Because I thought if they're showing us this and that's a bit of
Yeah.
foreshadowing, and tonight Carolyn and Danielle are going to go at one another, I'm worried that Carolyn has been doing so well so far that if there's some immediate. I know there was that episode where Carolyn did bring up Danielle at the round table, but it
Hmm.
kind of just petered away, and no one's really talked about it very much since.
I
But
mean, they talked about it last episode a bit.
yeah, um, I this instantly made me fear for what was going to happen. Meanwhile, Danielle's telling Dolores that she's scared the traitors might come for her tonight, and then says that this common trait she's noticed amongst the traitors is that they attack at round table, and it's the calm, relaxed people who end up being the faithful ones when they're banished. I think that's half true. With Bob and Rob. I don't think it's always true, and
No, yeah, I mean,
um,
yeah.
but I mean, I guess it worked. I guess Danielle, this she convinces other people. Well, she actually doesn't convince Dolores, who votes for Tom tonight. But hey, um,
Well, and earlier you also, yeah, while Tom was talking to Gabby, he talked about how Dolores is the traitor. And I'm just
yeah.
like,
Oh yeah,
he had one episode where he knew what was going on, and that was it.
yeah, it's 'cause, I mean, I'm sure that I know we're jumping all over the place. I'm sure that even last time, maybe I'm getting this wrong. I think Tom said, "Hey, I've been so suspicious of Dolores. Why, if she really is a traitor, why hasn't she already murdered me?" So he's now in one episode later, he's forgotten that
Yeah,
that already, and he's back to no, she's a traitor because I don't like her.
yeah.
Um, Dylan is talking to Gabby. He thinks he's had things wrong. He's saying, Gabby, you would have killed me if you really were a traitor. You would have had me gone by now.
Hmm.
So they seem to be
And she's
paying
like, oh,
up.
yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah. And they both say that they're a bit more suspicious of Danielle than Brittany at this point. And they don't mention Carolyn here. Maybe they do and they don't show
Right.
it, but they just talk about Danielle and Brittany. And I wondered, is this because they're assuming what a lot of the YouTube listeners are saying? Are they assuming, oh, there must be a Big Brother player who's a traitor, so it's one of these two? I
Well,
don't
I
know.
think it's that plus the same thing that happened from last episode, which is Danielle and Brittany are such an obvious duo. They're such an
Yeah,
obvious alliance. And I think it was Gabby who even said last episode something to the effect of, which she was talking to Sierra.
yeah,
And they said, oh, they're going to go to the end together. And Gabby said, yeah, and one of them's going to be a traitor and will win the game over the other one.
yeah,
So when you have an obvious duo like that, yeah, it looks like a traitor taking someone under their wing.
yeah. Uh,
Now, one thing that Dylan said here, though, I went back and, I rewatched things. He said there's one traitor left. Dylan,
uh,
Dylan,
oh, I
you
didn't.
watch this show.
Yeah, that
You
doesn't make
watch the
sense. It
show.
wouldn't
You
be.
know that there's not just one traitor left at this stage of the game.
Yeah. I didn't notice him saying that, but that's, yeah,
Yeah.
he should know that that just never happens.
Yeah.
Unless, I'm trying to think of some way around it. I don't know. Unless they think this is the final episode, but I'm pretty sure they
Yeah.
know that's way too many
Yeah.
people left for that. Yeah, that's a funny thing to say. Don't know what he was
Hmm.
thinking there. Uh, Dylan is talking to Carolyn as well. And he says, "Are you still on Danielle?" And she says, "Yeah." I mean, I don't know 100%, of course. They talk about can they gather enough votes for Danielle? Is it going to work? And Carolyn in her interview is saying, "I can't turn on her again and miss. She doesn't know if it's too soon. She doesn't know what to do." Brittany and Danielle are in the billiards room, and then yeah, Brittany is crying for some reason about the fact that maybe Danielle wasn't. You mentioned this, like, oh, I was so worried you might not have come back. Yeah, I thought, are you acting? Is this an act? I don't know what's going on here. Danielle's crying in her interview. She doesn't know what to do. She feels so guilty about lying to Brittany, and in
If
the
it is
room,
an act, bravo.
yeah, well, yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah. Brittany is saying to her, "We need to get out whoever we trust the least. We need to start playing endgame. Are you going for Carolyn?" And Danielle sort of just says, "Well, let's just wait for the round table." And in her interview is saying, "The best thing for me would be if Carolyn gets banished tonight, I can get to the end with Brittany." But I was thinking, where you're then going to have to betray her anyway, and it's going to feel even worse at that point.
oh
So,
no, I knew what she meant at that point, that she could get to the end by recruiting
right,
Brittany,
okay, okay. So it's time for the mission. And yes, as soon as we realize it's the big chessboard, this is where I remembered, oh, someone had pointed out on Facebook or
Yeah.
something that we had the shot on the preview that kind of was a bit of a misstep from the editors, the producers. Giant chessboard, giant chess piece, and
Well, and
oh,
Allan announcing to us,
yeah,
today the players will face a mission like no other. And I'm like no other, unless you've seen the Traitors UK, because it's exactly like the one on the missions, the Traitors UK.
yeah.
But
And it's also not entirely dissimilar to like previous seasons where they vote for like who's
right.
most likely to do this.
Yeah.
So it's not completely like groundbreaking. And yeah, he tells them that last night the traitors were asked a series of questions about the group. The players now have to decide who they think the traitors chose as the answer to each question.
Which,
Um,
by the way, you talked about they might have been in there arguing for 2 hours.
yes,
And then they have to
and
turn around and answer these questions after they
exactly what
were
I
going
thought.
at each other's throats,
Yeah,
unless this was first,
maybe.
and I don't know. They seem to be getting along very well in doing this, even when they debated certain points. But my God, did they sleep at all?
Well, I thought the exact same thing here. I thought, oh my, yeah, they had this big argument and then they had to do this. But I think they must have had to do it after they chose who to murder. Otherwise,
True.
they wouldn't have known they
Who's
couldn't have
left?
picked
Yeah.
Sam as an answer because they need to
Yeah.
know that Sam's not in the game anymore.
Right.
Uh, so Danielle is, yeah, she's saying to us, the viewer, maybe she's going to have to sacrifice some money. She has to look like a faithful. She can't know all the answers. And Carolyn echoes this. She says she'll give input, but not too much, but then doesn't really stick to that. um, as they're about to begin, though, Alan tells them they need a couple of veteran players to sprinkle their devious experience upon them. And I guess you knew this was coming. He welcomes some real queens of the game, and Kate and Parvati arrive in their black and white chess queen outfits. I I really laughed when Dolores says, "Any last minute tips?" And Kate goes, "Trust everyone."
Yes. Yes. I was happy to see Parvati back, even though I see her every week on Deal or No Deal Island anyway. Um, it's weird. I don't know exactly when they filmed what, but it literally on well, it's an NBC property, so you can see it on Peacock as well. But it's just funny. And then Kate, I was like, at least she'll be going soon. Um,
I was happy for Kate's just silly lines and jokes here and there. It was
Oh, there was
good.
one that I liked where Allan said something about thinking like a traitor, and she was like, "Yeah, I wasn't good at thinking like a traitor." We know, Kate. We know.
Yeah, it was good fun. I mean, I do wonder why are they here? Like, why have they paid them and flown them to Scotland to do this?
I mean, it's
Like,
kind of the
thing that
same
must have taken
question.
a couple of hours.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same question as why they flew Dr. Will out last time. It's like just to promote it, I guess, but is it worth it? Is it worth the thousands of dollars that they had to pay them, plus, plus flight, plus lodging, plus everything
Yeah.
else? Is it really worth all of that for them to be in the scene? Did it get anything? I would think if you're going to do this, a big guest performer, you'd have it early to try and draw people in and maybe even like give the idea like you were saying last week that Kate's going to play again, Parvati's going to play again.
Yeah.
But no, they didn't. They're obviously not coming in episode 9 to play again, and they never suggested that they would.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, it's not as bad as on Beast Games when Mr. Beast, in the middle of a challenge, has Lil Yachty, rapper Lil Yachty, walk out for reasons that I still don't know today. And Lil Yachty didn't know what he was doing there. The players literally were like, "Why is Lil Yachty here?" And it was never promoted, so it's not like on the previous episode it was like, "And next week, Lil Yachty makes an appearance." No, there was no reason for him to be there, other than for those of us watching to be like, "Why was he there?" It was so weird. But they paid him and there's no promotional value out of it. So I don't understand the financial thinking about that.
Okay, David, I'm gonna test you to see if this is your lie. I know that we're not right at this point in the game. What is this rapper's name? How do you spell it? Like
Why?
Lil?
I believe it's Yachty.
Oh, like a yacht.
Yachty. Yeah, Lil Yachty.
See, your accent made me think it was Yaddy, like Yaddy.
I don't have
But
an accent. You have an accent.
and what was little sorry, what was Lil Yachty wearing, David? Can you not
Uh,
remember?
I don't remember actually. Um, he was not wearing a
Hmm.
big hat
David doesn't
like.
remember. Interesting. Where's Tom to now ruin it?
Why would you think that I'm a traitor as I'm sitting here in my hooded cloak with these four people behind me in hooded cloaks? I don't understand.
Okay, Lil Yachty is going down as a potential lie. Now back to yeah, I wondered if Kate and Parvati, it's a bit silly and fun, but really
Yeah.
what is the point? I wondered if were they gonna maybe after the mission they go back to the castle with them and they like even though it's like silly and doesn't matter, like do the players get to grill them for more advice and then Kate and Parvati get to have a little bit of saying, she's acting
Hmm.
strange, and like they get a bit of input into the game. Like even that could have been more of a point to it, but anyway,
Yeah.
all they do is they're going to unveil the chess pieces and read the questions. So,
Yeah.
first piece is a giant snake. The question is, who is slithering under the radar? We see Danielle and Carolyn choose Britney mainly because it was something that coincidentally Sierra had mentioned at the round table, so they thought it would be fresh in everybody's minds, which it turns out it is. Gabby begins by saying it could be her. But they kind of led by Danielle, they all agree it might be Brittany. In this moment, we've got Dylan in his confessional saying that he's going to just sit back and watch everybody because he knows that this is a moment where the traitors could accidentally reveal themselves. And at this point, his eye is on Danielle. So I guess that's very observant of him and very clever to think, yeah, this could be very significant, and it is.
Hmm.
So they all take the places on the board. The giant piece moves around. Eventually, it lands on Brittany. That's where they've placed the giant snake piece. Hooray! They were correct. Next piece is a giant skull, and the question is, who's the biggest threat to the traitors? We flash back to Carolyn. She suggests Dylan, but then Danielle dismisses it for, well, it's I didn't know why. Now I think she dismissed it because she was trying to sort of play Carolyn this whole time.
Hmm.
They agree on Brittany again because she. Well, I didn't really understand. I found this very confusing. They agree on Brittany as the biggest threat because she's been speaking up at the round table. And then I thought, but you just chose her as the snake for not sticking out at the round
Right. Yeah.
table.
I was the same way. I was like, how can someone be under the radar and the biggest threat?
Yeah.
It made no sense whatsoever. And yeah, I don't know how Carolyn went with that one.
Yeah. Tom thinks that he might be the answer because it's Tom, and
Yeah.
he led the charge kind of on Boston Rob, and he was right about that. And they all do choose him. So the chess piece, the big tall traitor moves around, teases them a little bit, but actually then lands on Brittany and nearly takes actual Brittany out
Hmm.
as it plunges towards her. And we've then got Danielle in her interview clip saying she deliberately did this because she wanted to make herself look good in Brittany's eyes, and Brittany would never suspect her of choosing her as a threat, as a traitor. And I mean, I guess it's working, probably.
Yeah.
Next piece is the wolf, and the question is, who is the leader of the pack? We flash back. They think that Dylan is the obvious answer, but then they know that this will make everyone wonder, well, if he's the leader of the pack, why is he still here? Why haven't the traitors got rid of him yet? They settle on Tom. They know that he's going to say his own name, which he then does, even while the others are suggesting it's Dylan. And they ultimately decide on Dylan, but not before. It
Uh,
looks like Carolyn makes her first. Well, I wrote in my notes, it looks like Carolyn makes her first big misstep. It doesn't just look like
yes.
it, she does make her first big misstep.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, I'm very tempted to draw a very obvious comparison with another series of the Traitors. I won't, I think it would be maybe too much of a spoiler, so I'm not going to go into it.
Other people did the same on Blue Sky at the time.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
And I knew that you would know what I'm talking about, David. A
Yes.
really interesting similarity with another season. Um, So yeah, Carolyn sort of speaks up and says, "No, maybe it is Tom." No, now I'm
Yeah,
confusing what she says, but
yeah,
she makes it a little bit too obvious that she's not agreeing with the others instead of just being quiet. Um, Luckily, then they take a vote. Is it Tom? Is it Dylan? And Carolyn like reluctantly votes with the majority and just goes for Dylan, even though
mm,
she kind of tried to turn it back to
yeah.
Tom. Kate and Parvati are noticing Dylan all this time, and they're saying he's the Peter of the season, which made me laugh because a lot of people have been saying that online. I don't think he's anywhere near as annoying as Peter,
No, no. I think
but
Dylan knows what he's doing, and I think Peter thought he knew what he was doing a lot more than he actually did.
yeah,
Um, Also, what was interesting to me was Parvati and Kate. They must have either known Tom or known of him from other things because they immediately clocked him naming himself every time.
yeah, yeah. I thought that too. That they obviously just know him from is it Vanderpump Rules?
Yeah.
And yeah, so they know his reputation and that he may have an ego. We get a little bit of Gabby saying, "Oh hey, I wonder." Well, the giant chess piece first of all, it does take out
Hmm.
Tom. Reveals that that was the answer. And Gabby says, "Oh, then maybe the traitors are trying to sabotage this task." And Dolores points out, I think actually innocently points out, "Oh,
Yes.
Carolyn, you said it could be Tom." And I think she was just saying, "Oh, we should have listened to Carolyn."
Right.
But Carolyn panics in her next misstep, I think, and she goes, "I didn't say that."
Yeah.
And
I
Dolores
did.
is like, "Oh,
No,
I'm
no,
not."
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. And it's like everybody heard you, Carolyn.
Yeah, yeah. Um, So she thinks that Dolores is accusing her, and Dolores is saying, "I'm not saying you're a traitor." All of this catches Dylan's attention. He's now laser focused on Carolyn. Uh-oh. He thinks that, there are signs now suggesting that Carolyn may have been handpicking all of these answers. Uh, the final big chess piece is a mouse, and the question is, whose voice is the most irrelevant? We flash back to Carolyn saying, "Oh, it's me, no one listens to me," and
Hmm.
Danielle just lets her. And again, I think, "Oh, this is something bad is happening." We cut back to the group, and Carolyn keeps insisting, "Yeah, I've been saying, no one's listening to me." Dylan is silent this whole time, I notice.
Hmm.
The others all agree, "Yeah, Carolyn, it's you." And I think even she immediately regrets it, and implies, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said this so much." And Dylan now just thinks Carolyn has framed herself. Danielle's happy with everything that's going on. And I think even Parvati and Kate mention that it's a little bit suspicious, even though they've just arrived and don't really know what's going on. So mission ends. We're back in the jeeps. We've got Dylan
So,
talk. Yep, yep.
so before we get to that, I did want to say, I don't know if it's just my memory of the UK mission. Um, but to me, I felt like the US chess that it moved quicker. That
Okay.
I felt like in the UK version, the piece moved more slowly and paused and turned, and there was a lot more unnecessary drama. And in this case, it was more like boom, boom. Yeah, he moved a little bit, and then he or she, I don't know the gender of the traitor piece, um, and moved up and back. I felt it was quicker. I was not as bored,
Okay.
and it seemed to be doing it more smoothly, which
Mm.
is interesting because I think we've talked about before. It's my understanding U.S. film first.
Yeah, I think it did.
So like, was it, was the board wet and were they having trouble controlling it on the UK day, or was I don't know. It it kind of must move like an old Dalek did, on wheels and stuff with a remote control.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I enjoyed this. I enjoyed the actual
The
game
pace.
aspect, pace, yes, more. Um, and then, also at the end, before they get into the cars, I believe, Allan said, tomorrow, the power of seeing could change the entire game forever. And I was just like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
stop it. Stop pushing that. Stop, stop, stop."
I missed this because I was totally I think he even said it at breakfast. He said something about seeing, but
Yes,
I
he has dropped it in all this episode.
I'm such a dummy that I thought it was a hint to Kate and Parvati coming back to like see the game or
Mm,
something. So even this had sort of passed me by. But
yeah.
um, in the jeeps on the way back to the castle, Dylan is talking to Tom about his suspicions of Carolyn now. He says she was too defensive when Dolores
Hmm.
brought her up, pushing Tom's name. Tom still can't tell if it's because she's. I've written Tom, maybe I meant Dylan. If it's because she's a traitor or because she's so unique in speech marks, uh, which is this sort of description of Carolyn that comes up a few times. Meanwhile, in the other Jeep, or one of the other Jeeps, we've got Carolyn and Danielle and Gabby. Carolyn's asking them if they feel safe tonight. And I even wondered why she was saying
Yeah.
that. I felt it was a bit too obvious. And Danielle's like, yeah, I feel good.
Yeah.
So I thought it felt a bit out of character for Carolyn to even act like she was under suspicion. So that made me worry. And in her confessional, she's freaking out. She thinks she realizes now maybe Danielle set her up.
Hmm.
I mean, to be fit, I don't think it's that. Don't think she can blame Danielle and say she set me up. Like Carolyn chose the answers to the
Yeah.
questions just as equally.
I mean,
She had her part in it, you know.
I think it's a combination. And I think that hindsight is 2020 for Danielle. I think that um, we're getting a lot of her giving confessionals like, oh yeah, I totally set her up with that. And it's like, did you though? Did you know how it was going to happen? I think that she's patting herself on the back just a little too much.
Yeah,
But also, I think Carolyn isn't recognizing what she did to her own game quite as much. And don't get me wrong, I love Carolyn, and so this was painful to watch.
yeah, I felt that, and it's such a shame because it seemed like such
Hmm.
a sudden downfall this episode.
Yeah,
Like
it
she'd been
was.
doing so
She's
well.
going along. Yeah.
Yeah. Back at the castle, then we've got Ivar, Carolyn, and Tom. They're talking about Danielle.
Well,
Ivar's.
first, hold on.
Oh, oh.
Ivar, with his biggest contribution to the game, he went and got a cup of tea. That was the first thing he did when he got back to the castle.
Well, that's understandable. It's cup of tea is very, very important. I can't do the
Yes.
podcast without it. Um, so yeah, in Scotland, it's rainy and cold. You come inside, cup of tea immediately. So
Yeah.
Ivar's got it right. He's talking about Danielle and he's saying he's suspicious of her for being
Hmm.
under the radar. And of course, Carolyn jumps in on this and she's like, yeah, yeah, and also that lie, the lie, which we come back to. It's what she means is, days and days ago, Danielle said to Britney that I had been mentioning Britney and I hadn't been mentioning Britney. Uh, Tom is saying that yeah, he's saying he's more suspicious of Dolores. I have no idea
I,
why.
yeah, the man's nuts. That's why. I'm just going to say this now. I was going to say it later. The lie thing. Here's what I think Carolyn's biggest problem with the lie is. The only two people who knew whether or not it was the truth were herself and Danielle.
Yeah,
So her repeatedly saying there was no need for her to lie, it was a lie, it was a lie. If now, admittedly, in this game, lots of people don't act objectively. So if you repeat something often enough, then they believe it. But aside from that, if people step back and say, well, let's look at the evidence, and it was a lie. Well, how do we know that? It was
mm,
supposedly a conversation between you and Danielle. The only two people who truly know what happened were you and Danielle. So it's your word against her word. We don't know if it was a lie or not.
yeah. And Danielle's been denying it since it was
Right,
brought up. She's
right.
never admitted that she did make something up or not. We've got Carolyn again. She's in her interview. She's struggling. She knows that too many people trust Danielle. She doesn't know if she's going to be able to change their minds.
Mm-hmm.
So we get this really funny moment of Tom and Ivar saying, Carolyn, she could never pull off being a traitor. And
Yeah.
Ivar even says, if she actually is, she deserves an Oscar. So they should be polishing up that award by the end of this episode. Carolyn and Dylan are in the bar. They get this moment alone. And there's this interesting moment because Dolores tries to come in and Carolyn says, "Oh, can you just stay out for now? Can
Right.
you leave us to it?" Dolores then goes out, and it's the worst timing because Danielle's out there, and she
Hmm.
tells her, "Oh, they don't want us to come in." So I think this just gives Danielle even more fuel,
Right.
and it's difficult to judge. A lot of the time in the podcast, I say that it's a bad idea for people to have these private chats and not allow other people in. I mean, maybe it's if it's the norm, if everybody's doing it though all the time, and it's a Traitors season full of gamers and reality people, maybe they don't think that's weird and it's fine for them. So maybe this is normal
Well,
with
yeah,
this
it's
group.
sometimes you just need to have a one-on-one conversation. And this was clearly, Carolyn trying to talk to her good friend in the castle, Dylan. And I mean, she was so this is where things get tricky with Carolyn because Carolyn is quirky, Carolyn is funny, Carolyn is unique. Carolyn also weaponized that.
Yeah.
And that was always her plan. It was her plan going into Survivor was to take advantage of it. But here she really amped it up with him to use that impression about and say, the way people treat me and they all these things. And I am sure that all of that is true, especially in real life, people do it. But in the game, people also do it, but she is using it in the game. So it is this weird thing where some people I could see getting mad at her and saying, well, you shouldn't do that and
Mm,
use that. Um, and, but the thing is, it's a game. I think she should use it, and she was right to use it.
yeah. And I thought it had worked at this point. Dylan, he gets really upset and says, "Oh, God, I feel
Mm-hmm.
guilty. I've treated you like everyone treated you on Survivor. God, I've fallen
Right.
into the trap." So I thought it had worked. Carolyn playing on her emotion and saying no one ever listens to me. And maybe it almost worked, but just
Yeah.
not quite enough. There's also something funny that Carolyn says here when she's talking to Dylan and she says, no one listens to me. I think we should go for Danielle. And she says, if think of it this way, if it was Boston Rob telling you to do it, wouldn't you
Right.
listen? And he's like, yeah. But I thought that's probably not the best analogy because Rob was a traitor.
Yeah.
And you all know that now. So you probably shouldn't compare yourself to the known traitor in the game.
I mean, that's a good point. That's not what she was getting at. And I hadn't thought of that until you just mentioned it because I saw a lot of other people who pointed it out as her basically saying, don't be, I mean, at least the way they interpreted it was don't be sexist, don't discount me
Yeah.
just because of who I am. But you're right. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's like, yeah, you're saying if a traitor told you this, wouldn't you listen to them?
Yeah. So we've got Dylan then talking to us. He has to choose between them. He thinks there's too much evidence. It's got to be one of
Mm-hmm.
them, if not both. He doesn't say that. And uh, he's saying Carolyn is authentically herself. Should I go with that? But also I'm close to Danielle. He's torn.
Yeah.
In the kitchen, Ivar does classic Ivar. He tells Danielle, "There's suspicion on you." And yeah, it's Carolyn. She's talking about I just thought Ivar's
You know,
kind of
I,
also ruined Carolyn's game a little bit here, maybe.
I, I'll talk about this a little bit more in our wrap up. Is it possible that this is actually strategy on his part?
To do what? To make
To
himself
just
look like
tell
naive and
tell both sides what's happening and then just stand back and watch the
yeah,
fireworks.
yeah, I guess.
I mean, if it is, I'd like to see a confessional of him saying that,
Yeah.
but
I'm I feel like it's not.
I don't think it is either. But it would be brilliant if it were.
Yeah, it would. I just guess that because of who Ivar is, he's
Yeah.
not a TV person. He probably doesn't even watch the show before he came on it. I don't know. I'd be amazed. Um, Danielle then uses this Columbo comparison, which
Mm-hmm.
is so funny because it was this little funny reference in the UK version that one of the younger players didn't get, and he was like, what's Columbo?"
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like a lot of the young viewers are like, "What's a Columbo? Who's a?"
Yeah, she's saying no one ever suspected Columbo because he always acted dumb. I don't think Columbo acted dumb, did he? Like
I think
he's
so. I mean,
he's
I was never a huge watcher of Columbo, but he would always do his and one more thing, like he would do the.
yeah.
I mean, it's very similar to the new show Elsbeth
Okay.
in the U.S., where she appears to be this goofy woman.
Mm,
Have you ever seen anything about this show?
no.
She appears to be this very goofy woman, and she like dresses outlandishly, and she carries around like four big purses, and then she's working with the police, the New York police, and yeah, she investigates these things, and she asks questions of people, and they kind of let down their guard. And she always, oh, but by the way, what about this? And by the way, what about that? And so it's a very Columbo like situation with her as
Mm.
well.
Uh, I mean, before we go into the round table, we just sort of we kind of have another final moment of Ivar
Hmm.
suddenly kind of be like, yeah, maybe it could be Carolyn. So going into round two, it's very clearly going to be Danielle versus Carolyn, and
Which,
I think they know it doesn't matter now. Like one of them is going, they don't
right.
have. I think they know that they're not going to be a fallout in the turret if it doesn't work out. Like they
Yeah.
know that they might as well just go for it. Uh, Allan arrives shouting as always. He reminds them of the prize fund. At this point, it's of $152,500, which is I don't know the conversion rate, but probably already more than the UK final prize
Oh, yeah.
was. It seems like when he invites them to talk, there is silence for quite some time. Ivar strangely begins. He says, "Shall I start?" And he says, "I think there are two traitors left, and they're both girls." Because yeah, they assume that
What
they're
kind of world is this when Ivar starts and he hits the nail on the head?
yeah. Gabby's saying, "I don't think we can jump to that," and then Dylan he's pieced it together.
Hmm.
Um, I guess from Alan's little clues, riddles, he seems
Yeah.
to know that the seer twist is coming. Um, and but Gabby's like, well, okay, forget that for now. Let's just get a traitor out. And Dylan's like, okay. Um, and so here we go. Carolyn comes for Danielle to begin, and she's bringing up the lie as a faithful. Why would you ever lie? You made up this lie about me. Um, and Danielle is fighting back by saying that is the truth because in her mind, we've seen this, but she thinks that is the truth because you did say her name, but it wasn't in the gate, it was at the
Right. Yeah.
turret. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
That's how I can convince myself that this isn't a lie. And then Danielle's coming back at Carolyn saying you've done this thing, you act silly and dumb, and she says you Forrest Gump a lot. Like, geez, Danielle. Like, I mean, it's a bit strong. Um,
Yeah, and I've seen some people again on Blue Sky saying that was insulting because we know what I mean what she's basically saying. To me, I will defend Danielle a little bit here. I think that she was saying you pretend
yeah, you play it
to
up.
be that way, not that you really do have something wrong inside your head like Forrest Gump did.
Yeah. I even didn't know if I
Uh,
misheard it, and I had to sort of put it back a little
yeah,
bit. And I thought, oh, she did compare it to Forrest Gump. Wow.
yeah,
Um, and during this battle between them, Carolyn keeps kind of turning to Dylan, and she thinks that he's going to defend her.
right.
And then Danielle brings up the Columbo thing again. Carolyn even says, "I don't even know what this means," and I thought Danielle really lost it. I thought she did let her temper get the better of her. She just seems to go really overboard, and she's bringing up the mission, the fact, Carolyn, you chose yourself as the most irrelevant, and it was so obvious that you're a traitor, and you picked yourself as that, and she's focusing on again the idea that the traitors are always aggressive, they always attack, top, which I
While
think I
she's
really,
doing that, while
yeah,
she's being aggressive and attacking to the point that she's interrupting Carolyn
yeah,
after telling Carolyn, you say whatever you want and then I'll come in. Then she interrupts her and says, well, you can finish when I'm done. And says, oh, yeah, they're always aggressive and attack while she's aggressive and attacking.
yeah, exactly what I thought. I thought, first of all, I thought it's not true. it's a weird criticism to make of Carolyn, who everyone
Right.
acknowledges is very quiet and no one listens to her,
Yeah.
to then accuse her of being aggressive whilst being aggressive.
Yeah.
I mean, at least Tom jumps in and he's like, I've never seen Carolyn do that. But Danielle just keeps going. It seems like Carolyn is sort of stunned into silence for the time being. Eventually, Danielle kind of gives Carolyn the floor, but then keeps repeatedly interrupting her and
Hmm.
calls her a silent assassin. Carolyn is struggling to even get out sentences fully, and it keeps going back to Dylan. She's getting upset about being ignored. I think this is the most emotionally intense round table we've had this season. It's
Yes.
actually, it's bordering on uncomfortable. Maybe not for
Yeah.
us as viewers. We know it's a gate, but for the players, it just looks really intense. The atmosphere in the room. And I mean, before we go to the vote, anything else you wanted to pick up on?
No, I mean, I think this kind of it reminds me even her final tribal council wasn't this intense because the people were friendlier, that she was opposing. But I do think, I believe I've mentioned it before that, she wasn't able so much to explain her game in a way to get the votes in her final tribal council. And I think that happened here too.
Hmm.
And I wonder if it's related, and this is just me playing amateur psychologist, I guess. They were, I have a feeling that the Traitors turret went long. And
Hmm.
I don't know how much sleep she actually got overnight. Now, Danielle would have suffered from the same thing. But it just seems like, yeah, did that impact her, on because all of us, I mean, my wife will tell me when I don't get enough sleep, I'm cranky. I tell her she's wrong, but she'll tell me that. And so, all of us can suffer from that. And so I don't know if that plus everything else, the pressure of it kind of weighed on as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, Carolyn's done so well this whole time, but as soon as, but she's done so well because, like, her own success buoyed her the
Right,
whole time. She didn't really have anything to worry about, and as soon as
right.
it did look like she was in trouble, she's just crumbled. As we go into the vote, we've got interview clips, Danielle, Carolyn,
The ones that
and
we talked about
it,
earlier. Yeah.
yeah, this is where I sort of tried to critically or skeptically look at it, and I thought, when did they film these clips? Because
Hmm.
Danielle looks fairly composed, and Carolyn is still crying. They must have filmed this after the round table, and if she's still crying like this, she's just been banished, I think. So I
Yeah.
I thought it really gave it away.
Yep.
Um, too much actually. I think this was a misfire
Yeah.
in the edit. Uh, Carolyn is the first to vote, and even that made me realize, well, that leaves Dylan till the end. Does that mean he's going to be the deciding vote? And he was. So obviously Carolyn votes Danielle. Ivar's next. He goes for Carolyn, and he says, "Today you lost the argument." Quite a change from, a couple of hours ago when he was saying
Right.
if she was a traitor, she deserves an Oscar. It can't possibly be her.
Well, and I feel like, not my lie, just a memory trying to remember. I feel like the last time he did the thing where he said one thing and then went over and told the other person, he did the same thing. He switched the vote. Like
Yeah,
by telling that person, hey, there's suspicion on you, they then convinced him to go the opposite direction. I think it's happened twice now.
yeah. Dolores then, for some insane reason, votes for Tom. I just,
It's Dolores and Tom are useless here. They wasted a vote on each other in what was obviously going to be a close vote. Useless.
yeah, yeah, it just seems like such a waste. I mean, I guess they are so convinced. They must be convinced enough to vote for that person because they think, well, later on, I want to be able to say,
Right.
I told you it was them. I voted them all along,
Yeah.
and you didn't, or something. But uh, surely no one else around the table was talking about either of them. So,
I
so
think
why do
it's
it at this time anyway?
I think it's a combination of what you said plus them being clueless as far as, game strategy
Yeah.
in general.
Danielle obviously then votes Carolyn. Gabby's next and votes for Danielle. So it's a
Hmm.
tie right now. Tom then votes for Dolores again.
Hmm.
Why? And Brittany's up next.
Of
And
course.
Brittany,
Yeah.
she's got her ally. She's not going to vote for
Right.
Danielle. I mean, unless she felt Danielle was going to go, and so she wanted to be on the right side of the vote. But
Yeah, but no.
uh,
I
yeah,
did like what she said, that, Carolyn, you would be by far the most entertaining traitor to watch.
yeah,
So,
and she's right.
yeah.
So she votes for Carolyn, and Dylan is next, and he could take it to a tie. I wondered if it was going to happen, and we get like a revote, and
Hmm.
that would mean that Dolores
Oh
and
no,
Tom
that
would have to
yeah,
change.
Tom and Dolores would actually have to take a stand one way or the other. Oh no.
Yeah, but I
No.
again, I kind of wasn't really surprised because of the
Right.
things that we've talked about. He votes for Carolyn, uh, yeah, again, I just at this point thought, wow, I can't believe how quickly the game changed in one episode. So Carolyn stands up for her speech and she says, "Every day of my life, I'm judged because of who I am, my differences, my quirks. I didn't want to connect with a lot of you." She says, "Playing the game is not easy for me. I just wanted to have fun, but I have to get real with myself." And she's got a great reveal, actually. She
Hmm.
doesn't just say, "I'm a traitor, I'm a fit." She says, "Being a traitor isn't fun." And they go
Yeah.
wild. They're all going
Yeah.
nuts. I actually really felt for Carolyn because I thought, oh, I really actually think she looks like she is struggling and very upset.
Yeah.
So I do feel bad. Danielle has some sort of like fit on the floor.
She
I
falls
said
out
it.
of her
I said it.
chair and she's like sobbing about, I knew I was right. I told you I was right. And I'm just like,
Oh, too much.
oh. I mean, I understand she was the one who went after her and Carolyn went after Danielle and everything, but it's just, you're overdoing it.
Yeah, and I, th- I get if she was a faithful, maybe there would be this surge of release,
Hmm.
like, oh, I really put myself out there. But she was so aggressive in her attack of Carolyn. I thought, like, you can't act like you're now shocked that she really is. You were so
Right.
convinced. So I just thought this is
Yeah.
way too much. Please, will the other players notice this? And we get a little bit of Carolyn finally before she is off for good. She's proud of herself. She's very emotional.
Mm.
Um, Alan makes them all sit down again, and so I thought now he was going to reveal the seer twist, but
Hmm.
he kind of just gives his usual speech about the traitors are now going to get revenge, and that's sort of it. And as they leave, they're all congratulating Danielle. She caught a traitor, and I at this point, I my note in my notes here, I wrote, "Won't they see this as a Boston Rob move?"
Well,
Literally
and I,
seconds later.
I, I put the same thing on Blue Sky. I was like, is someone going to do it? And yes, seconds later, Gabby immediately does it. And I just, a couple minutes later, quote, posted myself and said, yep, there we go, Gabby.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so again, I'm giving Gabby more credit
Hmm.
than I ever have. She says, "Wasn't this giving Rob and Bob? Like,
Yeah.
is it? Didn't we just watch Tracer on Tracer?" And Tom's sort of like, "Yeah, it was like maybe Dolores isn't the traitor." Well, he doesn't say that, but he
Right.
sort of
No,
seems
heaven
quite
forbid.
like taken aback by this possibility. And
Hmm.
and again, we've got Brittany acting like she's shocked by this, and it's this moment of realization, and she even says in her interview, "I haven't been murdered. Is this why?" So I don't know what to believe with her. And so time for the turret. We've got Alan, of course, telling us Danielle, she won't be alone for long. She's going to have to recruit, and he tells her this is the last chance to recruit. It will be a face-to-face ultimatum in the castle dungeon.
Hmm.
There's no one to discuss it with. We could get Danielle talking us, the viewer, through her options, but we sort of just
Come on. We
cut
know.
right
Yeah. Don't
to,
waste our time here.
yeah, Alan delivers the letter to the
Yeah.
chair, and in walks Brittany. Um, and she's saying, "You've got to be shitting me." And she does say this thing that I don't quite understand. She goes, "It's the most dangerous time to be recruited as a
Yes.
traitor because everyone's suspicions are heightened." I thought,
Yeah.
is it the worst time? Isn't this
No,
the
I
best
wrote,
time?
yeah. What I wrote was exactly the opposite. It's the best time to become a trader. Yeah.
Yeah. It's certainly. no more dangerous than any other. I don't.
Right.
I mean, I guess the numbers are down, so statistically you're more likely to be banished, but I'd be like, oh my God, this is the best thing that could have happened to me in this game.
Right. Right.
And we've got Danielle saying she needs someone she trusts to get to the finish line.
Mhm.
So, this was her plan for a
Right.
while at least. Brittany's wondering, she's approaching the dungeon and she's even saying, is it Danielle? Would she really recruit me? It's so obvious. I
Yeah.
thought, yes, it is so
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah.
And she arrives to this hooded figure, and the episode ends here on her cliffhanger.
A cliffhanger. Now, a cliffhanger. Let There is no cliffhanger here. Okay? Like, we don't know when Danielle asks Brittany whether she wants to be a traitor or be murdered. It was dumb. When I was live posting, I happened to find a GIF of Brittany saying, just kill me. And so I posted to criticize the stupidity of this so called cliffhanger. And I said, here's a hint, it won't be this GIF. You know, I mean, there are some people who said, well, of course, no one would ever do that. And I'm like, well, okay, I can't say no one because it's actually happened. But it isn't going to happen here when her best friend in the game and frenemy,
Hmm.
outside the game brings her in. No, of course, it's stupid. It is not a cliffhanger. If they wanted a cliffhanger, I mean, I, I guess what this tells me is they're not going to also murder. I mean, I haven't done the math.
Mm.
Sometimes there's a blackmail and murder.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like there won't be because I think that would have been the cliffhanger then.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it's not a cliffhanger in the sense that we don't know whether she's going to accept. I guess it's
Right.
just fun that we'll get to see her reaction. So we're just waiting for the fun reaction.
I
That's kind of
guess,
it.
but yeah. I mean,
Uh,
it reminds me of also this week, well, technically last week, there was a Deal or No Deal Island cliffhanger ending. They didn't show who the person was that was going, and then the person that was going was okay. It
hmm,
wasn't one of the big stars of the show, in my
okay.
opinion,
Yeah.
and it was like, okay, why did we have to wait to see this person go? I don't understand.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Uh, so big episode. We've got our predictions. We've got some listener
oh, preview.
questions. We've
Let me
got
give you
oh
the preview first, since you
yes.
don't get the preview.
Unless this
Uh,
preview is also going to spoil something.
Uh, no, well, not for us. Allan says someone will become the seer, and quote, this power could turn the entire game on its head. And I'm like, yes, Allan, it could, as it has before, and it was terrible. So stop it. Just let's go back in time, intervene, and stop this from happening.
And that's all we get in the preview,
Yeah.
really? Okay. Uh, do you have final thoughts on the episode for now while we go to some listener questions?
I'll wait until the list after the listener questions.
Okay, how about, well, actually, I'm going to kick us off with, it
Okay.
makes sense to start. We have a voice memo from
Yes.
uh, Caroline B, and Caroline sent this before this episode aired, but it's sort of the most appropriate
She was
message that,
she was kind of a seer.
yes, Caroline was a seer. Let's listen to what she said.
Hi, Matthew and David. My name is Caroline. I am memoing in from Virginia in the US. I've been watching the latest season of the US Traitors and am Team Carolyn all the way. Um, and so far, I've been so excited and delighted that in all of the traitor reveal clips that they've been posting on Instagram and YouTube, all of the faithful who have been banished or murdered have just been blown away that Carolyn is a traitor. And almost all of them have said, like, she's going to win this thing. But now I'm starting to get worried that they wouldn't show us that over and over again if Carolyn actually was going to win, and that it might be some sort of like red herring. So I'm worried for my girl Carolyn, and I'm wondering if you'll have any thoughts about that.
Aha. So, what do we think? Was it too obvious? Everyone being shocked. Uh, I think you've got a
I,
different thought on this, David.
yeah, I think that I, while there's certainly editing that's done on the show, I don't think that there's this type of editing that can be done in these YouTube clips
Mm,
because, I mean, they're just opening up a piece of paper and seeing who the traitor is and reacting.
yeah,
So the only way to not show them saying it's so surprising that it's Carolyn is to not show it at all.
yeah,
And so I don't think it was anything like that. I yeah, I don't think there was any particular editing one way or the other in those.
yeah,
Certainly in the show itself, we'd been led to believe one thing and not another, but not in those YouTube clips afterwards.
yeah. I sort of flip-flopped in this when I first got the voice memo from Caroline. I thought, oh, uh, maybe Caroline's on. At first, I thought, well, I don't know. I think I thought maybe Caroline's onto something, and then I dismissed it and thought, no, 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 it's fine. Uh, Caroline's safe. We've got nothing to worry about. And then I thought what you said. I thought, well, they kind of have to show us people's
Right.
reaction. They can't just cut to them saying something else they didn't say.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But it is really funny that the timing of Caroline sending this. So and Caroline
Yeah.
was Team Caroline, so I'm very sorry. So were we. This didn't turn out how we thought.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
David, you've got some other questions.
Yes, I have some questions from Blue Sky. So TJ asked, would Dylan have been a better choice to recruit? Um, if the comp is the same from the UK version, I think he's a lock to win it, and Danielle is screwed. Now, I don't think we can judge based on the factors that they don't know. So Danielle doesn't know what the comp will be, or even what the power of the seer is. So without thinking ahead to that, and even potentially with thinking ahead, I think Danielle pretty much had to recruit slash blackmail slash ultimatum Britney. If they make it to the end together, Britney is the only one Danielle can truly rely on to share the money. I mean, Dylan probably, but not 100%. And also, let's face it, Danielle has her emotions way too invested in Britney. I don't think she could pull off the rest of the season if it involved recruiting someone else, even Dylan, and then beating Britney. Now, I'm not saying this is a good thing, because I, of course, believe that people should separate their emotions from their gameplay. But this is the situation where we find ourselves. So, with that in mind, it makes the most sense, based on that, for her to go with Britney.
Yeah. I the only other I was trying to think of, well, could Danielle have recruited someone else that is then likely to get banished next? But I don't think there is really anyone with major suspicion on them, like
But then if they get
Tom.
banished, it'll just be her, and she'll still have to go up against Britney in the end,
Uh,
which
oh,
she doesn't want
yes,
to
that's
do.
right. Yeah, she would have to then be willing to take all the money for herself,
Right.
even though she is besties with Brittany and she's
Right.
really emotional and guilty about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I do think Brittany was kind of the only way she was going to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's related. Several of these questions are related. It's related to this next question from Shani D. Is there a path for Danielle and Brittany to win the game together? Um, what do you think?
Well, no. Well,
Oh,
actually, there must. Well, there could be.
yeah.
I don't think they will, but well, let's. Next, we've got one more episode where they'll find out the status of the person
Right.
who's banished. So if they banish a faithful next episode, they'll know that, and they'll know that there's still at least one traitor in the game. So,
They should know that there's at least two traders in the game.
oh yeah, because they'll know there's been a recruitment.
Right.
So, especially if there's no
Mm-hmm.
murder tomorrow, which it seems like there's probably not going to be. Could they keep wrongly banishing until it's too late? I guess they could. Yeah. I don't. I just don't think it's likely that Danielle is going to get away with it now.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a path. I think it's a hard path. It, as I said, if those two get to the end, they will agree to share the money, I believe. Um, can Danielle survive to that point with the suspicion already on her? And the other should be suspicious of that duo in particular.
Yeah.
It will actually help Britney if Danielle gets banished next, because then Britney will be able to be like, oh, I was the traitor's pet. I had no idea. I was just a harmless, innocent faithful. Um, so,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I mean, we'll come back to our predictions, I guess.
right.
I guess, I mean, I have to throw my winning prediction out the window now, but I'll
Yes.
come back to
Yes.
what I think may end up happening.
Julie H asks, do you think Brittany would turn on Danielle if she needs to survive, or is her guilt going to stop her and sink her own game? So, following up on the previous questions and answers, I do not think Brittany will turn on Danielle no matter what. We saw how torn up she was at the beginning of the season about reindeer games. I can't imagine a world where she turns on Danielle and makes her lose again. Uh, now, as I mentioned about Danielle's state of mind, is it emotional? Yes. Should that come into play? No. But that's one of the issues with the US version and all the pre-existing relationships
Mm.
is it does come into play, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. I, I, I don't know these players outside of the show,
Mm-hmm.
so I I can't speak to, what Brittany and Danielle are like and what they might do. I mean, so yeah, I think it's unlikely that Brittany's going to actively turn on Danielle and scheme to
Yeah.
get her out. Is there maybe there's a possibility that she sees that's the way it's going, and it's going to look really suspicious if she doesn't
Right.
vote for Dan. So
Yeah.
maybe
If
at the
it's going to
round
be a
table,
unanimous vote. Yeah.
she's like, oh, I'm gonna just have to do this because
Right.
A, it's not going to make a difference, and B, it's going to look weird if I don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see that that might end up happening, but I don't think she'll be planning for that to happen or actively trying to make it happen.
I mean, on the other hand, she could also just not vote for Danielle and say,
I was
after what happened in
fooled.
reindeer games, I can't vote
I
for
can't.
her again. And
Yeah,
like vote for a random person like Dolores, waste her vote on purpose,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Or Tom.
Yeah. Um,
Okay.
all right. The next one is from Kimberly. She said, the seer twist is definitely coming in the next episode, which I hate with how it went in the UK version. Would you like the doctor twist from Mafia instead? And I feel like which by the way, the direction this question went was kind of a twist in itself. Um, the doctor twist would be interesting, I think, but it's really and for people who don't know, the doctor from Mafia gets to save one player or protect one player every round secretly, but they can't protect the same person twice in a row. So in this situation, having a doctor twist once, I mean, it's one person having a secret shield. And since it's a one time thing, they'd probably use it on themselves. So really, we'd need to have, if you were going to import the doctor twist from Mafia, it would have to be an ongoing thing where
Hmm.
there really is someone called the doctor and they have to keep switching it up. It could be interesting. I wouldn't mind seeing that where there's basically a secret shield every week.
Yeah. Someone mentioned something similar on YouTube in one of our episodes. They talked about the alchemist as a role. I don't know if that's the same as the doctor. I think it might be. Yeah, and then I think even in Werewolf it's called something else perhaps. But yeah, a role. I mean, we could talk about game theory for a long time
Right.
in this, and it's would give me a headache. But uh, I guess the problem for a TV show is there's the worry that you give someone that role and they get banished in episode one or two, and then you just don't have it for it would have to be a role that you can once that person dies, they pass on.
Or if they die, they die. That's it. It's like a shield going out. You could even call them the armorer, and they give each person a secret shield each week or
Yeah.
something.
I just think,
Um,
but I think from a TV production point of view, you'd be
yeah,
really annoyed if you'd created this new role in the game, and by episode two, you're like, oh man, they're gone. Like we don't even
yeah.
get to like. go on about it for the rest of the season. Like I'd be really
Yeah,
annoyed. But yeah, I mean that
I mean,
should be able to happen
considering they brought back Kate and Parvati for half of part
for
of
10
one
seconds.
episode. Yeah. All right, and then we have one last from Truly Faithful. Not really a question, but more of a comment. It's funny. I'm going to change this a little bit based on how you changed something. That um, that Carolyn, one of the most under the radar traitors in this season, and a traitor in another season in a similar mission, kind of revealed themselves. And so it just goes to show how these kind of missions can have such an impact. And yeah, I have to agree. I know it wasn't a question, but I don't like the outcome, obviously, but I love that there are missions that are actually meaningful and allow players to fall into traps, because it wasn't a twist like the upcoming Seer will be, where someone can get screwed due to no fault of their own.
Mm-hmm.
This mission gave players the opportunity to screw up or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I've said it throughout the season and throughout
Right.
UK season recently that I like what I feel is a change in the missions compared to seasons 1 and 2, that there's more at stake, or there's more opportunity for
Right.
tracers to make decisions about how they want to play and what that might reveal about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Viking boat challenge, which I think was episode 1 this season,
Yeah.
and people had to choose whether or not to get off on their raft, and I liked that presented the traitors with
Yeah.
options that could cause them problems or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, that is it for Blue Sky questions. That's always a good place to ask a question of us.
Thank you, Blue Sky people.
Yeah,
Making me want to join Blue
that's
Sky.
right. That's right. It's my
Hmm.
mission to get you on there.
It's maybe on its way. David, do you have any other overall thoughts on the episode beyond those questions?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously was very surprised. Well, not going into the episode, I wasn't very surprised. But other than that, leading up to this point, I was very surprised and saddened that things turned on Carolyn so quickly. But as much as I hate it, I have to admit she fell into the trap.
Yeah.
As I was just saying, the mission was set up in a way where that could happen, and she did. She just walked right into it, unfortunately. I said earlier that I was happy to see Carolyn using her real self to hide the fact that she was a traitor. But here's the thing. Whatever show Carolyn may go on in the future, this is the last game where she'll ever be able to play using these tactics. She's going to have to change it up, because unless she's with a bunch of idiots who have no idea who she is, which is possible if she now moves over to Deal or No Deal Island, and makes the NBC circle here, because that cast, like, almost nobody on that cast knew who Parvati was. So it's like, really? You're going on a reality show and you don't know who Parvati is, who has been on, I think it's 4 seasons of Survivor, has won a season, was on the Traitors and everything else. I understand some people don't watch Survivor, fine, but you're going on a reality show. Do a little bit of, digging there, little research. Anyway, so if Carolyn ends up on a season like that, maybe she could do it again, but otherwise, and they're just going to clock her right away. She's going to have to come up, they're going to be like, hey, you're using the Columbo strategy again.
Yeah. Yeah, any other
So,
thoughts?
yeah, I do want to say, I have been critical of Danielle's game. Obviously, I thought Carolyn would outlast her, but Danielle pulled it off with some help from Carolyn, admittedly, but it still remains to be seen whether she can make it to the end. I suspect not, but then I've been suspecting she'd go soon the whole season. So props to Danielle, for making it this far. I do think one thing that was important was that Danielle still had a partner in Britney, and Carolyn had nobody. The Survivor people were all going to stick together. And then Boston Rob completely blew up the Survivor Alliance, and it just came down to Carolyn.
Yeah.
And so she had nobody. let alone someone that she actually knew from outside the game. She didn't even have people who were connected by the same show. So I do think that helped Danielle and hurt Carolyn. And then finally, I had indicated before something about Ivar. I do think he might know that it could have been both Carolyn and Danielle. And that's why he was telling both to gauge. And he just went the direction that he saw the other people going.
Yeah.
So is Ivar the real Columbo?
I wouldn't go that far. But I can believe that he is. I can believe that he also thinks Danielle is a traitor.
Yeah.
And it wasn't one or other of them, it was both of them.
And that's why he said there are two traitors left and they're both women. He knew
Yeah.
exactly who he was talking about.
Yeah. But then should he have said that and make himself a potential murder target? I don't know. Um, I guess, yeah, my final thoughts are also that I did not. At the end of it last week, I was like, Carolyn's gonna win, hooray! And what a change it took.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't expect it at all. Although yeah, as we've said, I feel like the editing ruined things a little bit here as we went into the round
And the
table.
social media.
Yeah, I managed to avoid social media
Mm-hmm.
spoilers. I think I've avoided that mostly this season, which
I
is
would have, except for that one message that I got
yeah,
notified of.
yeah, that's really frustrating.
Yeah.
I want my final thought on Carolyn is perhaps she was a victim of her own reputation on the show. Like, so she was known as the quirky one, the one that no one listens to. Um, and actually, I think she then tried to battle against that because she hadn't been listened to for so long. And this episode tried to speak up a bit more, but actually,
Mm-hmm.
that's what ruined things in the mission because Dylan
Yeah.
noticed it was really weird what she was doing, and then maybe even at the round table, it was too even though it was going to come down to her and Danielle, maybe she was too explosive and emotional and hadn't really ever been like that at round table,
I
and that
mean,
was
I, I
enough.
I do wonder if Dylan felt like he was being overly guilt tripped between the private
Mm,
meeting between them and the round table. Like, did he just feel like, wow, this is really too much?
yeah, perhaps. Yeah. So, what about what? Well, I mean, there's not much to predict for the next episode, really. We we pretty much know Britney is surely going to
Right.
accept becoming a traitor. There's probably not going to be a murder, as far as we can tell. What do you, what's the outcome? Where do you think the season is now going?
I think, and I forgot to actually write down a prediction, but I think that I mean it's hard to do this because I've been predicting that people will catch on and wise up to Danielle this whole season, and they still haven't. But as you laid out and as I laid out, I don't see how the two of them make it to the end together.
Yeah,
I think that the stuff that Gabby brought up, I think that eventually, I think they have to get Danielle out.
yeah,
And then they're all going to celebrate and say, aha. And then I think Brittany is going to win as the recruited traitor.
yeah. I think I've got two possibilities. Either Britney wins, which will be quite annoying if someone becomes a traitor in episode 10 and then wins in episode 11. But that's the nature of the format, and that's
Right.
possibly a flaw, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Although, again, I've argued against that myself in other episodes where I've said, well, you still had to do a good job to stay in the game until that point, so
Right.
you were still playing the whole time. Um, so either Brittany's going to win, or the faith. I think Danielle's going, and I think it comes down to a question of whether or not the other faithful will then trust Brittany, and will they see she'll pretend that she was fooled and that her friend,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I was double crossed. That's what she kept me close to her. Can't believe I didn't see it. Or are the other players going to say this is too we can't believe this. Like there's too much doubt there. We should just get rid of you in case you're a traitor. I think. in most seasons that would happen. Maybe it's that maybe I can't, maybe celebrity traitors are less have less investment and they're willing to take the chance more, perhaps.
Yeah, a lot of it also comes down, as we know, to what happens with the seer.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, definitely.
if let's say that Britney gets it,
Mm,
okay, it would be foolish of her to then read Danielle and say, "Oh, she's a faithful," because then people would be like, "Yeah, sure, of course you two would say that."
yeah,
It would be smart of her to read it and say, "Dylan's a faithful,"
yeah,
and the same for Danielle. I don't know that Brittany or Danielle will do that as opposed to making the emotional decision of reading the other person.
yeah,
They should. And if they do that and they say, okay, I've read it and Dylan is a faithful, then you get Dylan on your side. And oh, suddenly you have almost a majority now.
yeah,
Um, Anyone else should look at Danielle.
yeah. I I didn't even I forgot about this year.
Right,
I I think someone like Tom or Dylan will, if it's like a physical task, I don't mean to
right.
be stereotypical,
Yeah,
but if it's a physical running around doing things task, maybe Tom or Dylan will win that. Um, we've seen those shots of Dylan and he's fit and can do these things.
yeah.
He's like bench pressing himself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would predict that they will pick Danielle to find out if she's a traitor, and she will be, and uh maybe we see a repeat of other seasons. I don't know.
It'll be funny if they come down and they get rid of Danielle and Brittany, and then they still keep voting, and the whole Tom Dolores thing, comes out of them fighting against each other, and we end up with like Ivar and
Ivor,
Dylan winning, or something like that. Like
yeah,
Ivar becomes the big winner.
yeah, Ivar, the privileged, rich, royal person, wins
Yes.
a load of
Yeah.
money on the traitors. I'd be so
Yeah.
mad. Uh, yeah, I can't pick. Brittany wins on her own, or the faithful win. One of
Yeah.
those.
Okay.
So we have just a few final things. We've been playing our lying game, the Trade Our Traitor, and
Oh
we're
crap! I
about.
forgot.
We're That's your lie. You didn't forget. We will be revealing what we think the other person lied about. Before we get there, David, where can we find you online?
So I am all over social media and reality TV podcasting. Of course, I will continue being right here with you for the next couple weeks for the rest of the Traitors US season. I am also already back podcasting about U.S. Survivor on the Rob Has a Podcast Network, with Why Blank Lost being the name of the show. Our preview episode for the new season was posted literally during the airing of The Traitors. I had recorded it beforehand, and then it was posted, and I was like, I can't even promote this because I'm live posting about The Traitors. Aside from that, I have been posting at least three, often more. Lately, it's been like 4 or 5 videos, reality TV short videos per day on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, where I'm at David Bloomberg TV. Right now, they're a mix of the Traitors US, Australian Survivor. I will also be posting mini Why Blank Lost videos for those. Deal or No Deal Island, the new show Extracted, and a few left from the Beast Games, and of course, regular Survivor, U.S. regular Survivor, U.S. Survivor will start, very soon. People can find all my various accounts and important links at Linktree/David Bloomberg. In the URL, there's a dot before the EE. You can find me, as of course I've mentioned about a dozen times, on Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg. I encourage anyone at any other place to come over to Blue Sky. Just yesterday, went over 4,200 followers there. Went over 47,000 followers a few days ago at YouTube. So hoping to crack 50 soon.
Yes.
So yeah, come find me.
And as always, the links to those are in the episode description here. As for the Trader, you can follow on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at the Trader Podcast. Thank you, everybody who's been following and subscribing in various places. And whatever platform you're using to listen to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, all the other ones, I don't know. Whatever lovely platform you're using, it's really helpful if you can subscribe or leave a little review or a rating. And you can leave comments on all of these platforms. You can email me at thetradarpodcast@gmail.com. Or you could be like Caroline B and you could leave a voice message at memo.fm/ the Trade Hour podcast. Of course, there is the risk that you leave a voice memo and then by the time the next episode finishes, it's feels slightly redundant, but it's still good fun to hear. And you can sort of maybe be proved right about something
Yes.
in advance. Um, One more thing is that various people have been really, really kind and donated to the coffee.com page for the podcast. So we've had a donation from someone called HFG, who says, they've said something about you, David. I was screaming when David said that the It Must Be the Shoes commercial was LeBron James instead of Michael Jordan and Spike Lee. I'd forgotten about your lie detector game and was so disappointed. I'm glad it was just a trick. Great recap, guys. And as well as HFG, George, and someone called Cat Jean, and
Oh
someone
yeah,
called
catching. Yep.
Cat.
We've heard from them before.
Yes. And also Zircon Chic, I think that is. Zircon
Okay.
Chic or Chick Chic has left a very nice comment and a donation. So thank you so much to those people for just helping me out with keeping the podcast going because I have to pay for various things. If you wanted to chip in, you can visit ko-fi.com/Matthew Keeley, and that link is in the episode description as well. So David, it's time for us to reveal what we have been lying about. We've been playing the Trader Traitor. David, I am struggling today. I have I have two guesses. How could I forget?
Okay.
I have two guesses about what you.
That's two more guesses than I have right now. So
Um, I'm gonna go first then. Okay, I would like to give you some time to think of things, which I then regret because then you end up catching me. Right. I thought you were talking about another show. You were talking about, oh my goodness, what was it? Something in Australia, and you said it airs on Channel 10. Maybe it was Australian Survivor. And I wondered if maybe that was the lie. I know that Traitors Australia, when it existed, was on Channel 10, I'm sure. So I thought maybe that was a sneaky lie about the channel. And then, of course, we had Lil Yachty. Uh, you conveniently forgot what Lil Yachty was wearing. Was that suspicious? I and I don't watch Beast Games, so you know that I probably wasn't gonna know if that was true or not. I'm so probably I think both of these are wrong. I'll go for Channel 10 was the wrong channel in Australia.
no, well, okay, as far as I know, that's the right channel. It wasn't a lie. If it was a mistake,
Oh,
but
what if your lies about Lil Yachty, I'm gonna be really mad.
it is not.
Okay, thank God. David, what was your lie?
My lie was apparently you didn't notice how I just wanted to make sure you heard me. That I didn't watch the recap. I didn't watch the recap. I never watched the recap. Yeah, I did watch the recap.
Man, that's
I even
sneaky.
emphasized it. I'm like, oh crap, I may have overdone it this time and
No,
overemphasized it.
you didn't. You never watched the recap. I
I
just
know.
believed it.
I thought of that last week. I was like, oh, I have to watch the recap this week just because I keep saying I never watched the recap. So this was a week-long plotted lie.
Well done. You got
Like
me.
like Danielle, I'm always 20 steps ahead.
Someone left a comment on it was either on Spotify or maybe it was someone who donated on coffee.com, and it's someone who's catching up with episodes of
Mhm.
the Trader. They're going back to old seasons, and they were like, "Hey, Matthew, I've noticed that you used to be really good at the line game, and now you suck at it." Well, they didn't say that. They were a bit nicer, but they were like, "You used to be good at this," and I had to admit, yeah, I've gone. I'm too deep in it. I'm trying to meta it. I'm just my trader is all off,
Yeah.
so I've no idea what anyone's lying about ever now. David, what do you think I may have lied to you
I
about?
kind of forgot partway through that we were supposed to be doing this. I just got into arguing about the episode, and um, there was one thing you said that at first I thought you were lying, but then I remembered it, and that was the Columbo
Hmm.
reference because you said it, and then I'm like, no, I really. So either you've convinced me to misremember, you've planted a false memory in my head, or that wasn't your lie. Um, I I really don't know. I really just have no recollection of anything you said that could have been a lie. So because of that, even though I know it's wrong, I'm just going to say the Columbo thing.
Okay. I did not plant a false memory that UK players talked about Colombo as well. That was
Yeah,
true.
that's what I thought.
I did something very devious, something that
Ah,
I've wanted to do for a long time.
uh-oh. See, you were plotting. I thought a week was a long time. It turns out you've been plotting longer than that.
I've been plotting for weeks and weeks. Quite often, on the podcast, we mention something and then we go, "Oh, that wasn't my lie, I promise." Today I said something and then went, "Oh, that's not my lie, I promise." And it was my lie.
Well, you know, when you said it, you kind of said it weird. You brought it up, and I was thinking, and I don't even remember what you said, but I was thinking, well, that was kind of weird to bring up, but okay.
I lied and said that when Allan said at breakfast, "You'll need to stay one move ahead and avoid rookie mistakes."
Hmm.
That's the exact same line that Claudia used in UK Traitors. And I said, "Oh, I've said this before and it was a lie and it wasn't this time, I promise." But it was still my lie. So Claudia did not say that, I
I
don't
didn't
think.
remember her saying it, but I was actually, I wish I had paid more attention. See, this is where losing track of because as you were saying that, I'm thinking, I don't remember her saying that, but maybe I just didn't pay attention to it. So I got it.
See,
That's where I got to click in. Oh, wait, lying game, lying game. I need to put like a post-it, like right here
yeah.
on the screen that says, remember the lying game.
See, you've very appropriately, you've become like Carolyn. You've been so good at it that you got used to being good at it and then you
Yes.
plummeted and you forgot it even existed.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like when I was setting up to do my Survivor podcast yesterday, I was like, okay, what am I going to lie about? Wait, no, wrong podcast. I don't do that in this podcast.
I mean, you could lie on other podcasts for
Yeah,
fun.
I could, but
And then at the
yeah,
end, go, haha, I tricked you. And then they say why.
yeah,
Um, David, thank you for joining me again for episode 9. We're almost there. Penultimate episode next week. Well, kind of penultimate
yes,
when we've got the finale and reunion
right.
episode. Very
Hmm.
excited. Until then, keep us on your radar.
And stay traitorous.
Bye.